Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another episode of Chess Chat, a program brought to you from the new Studio A and state-of-the-art production facilities at Fitchburg Access Television. I am your host, George Merijanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club, the second oldest chess club in Massachusetts, meets every Wednesday evening from 6:30 to 10:30 in rooms 142 and 143 of the McKay Campus complex at the university. And with me, once again, for this episode of Chess Chat, is our award-winning director, Darren Dame of Fitchburg, recipient of FATV's prestigious Boulder Award in 2009. He's assisted in the control room and also on camera by fellow resident and longtime Wachusett Chess Club member Brian Bigelow. And sitting across from me is my trusty co-host, longtime colleague, chess author, chess photographer, Wachusett Chess Club statistician, Dave Couture of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hello, George.
Well, Dave, I want to let our viewers know that they actually have heard a new musical intro with our episode today.
Right.
Can you tell our viewers something about this new music that we have now?
So this is my friend Jay Ducharme, who lives in Westfield.
Yes, Westfield, Mass. Yes.
Former college professor who's I guess would say is a composer now in his retirement.
All right.
And that was intro from a piece, the Mount Tom Suite.
Mount Tom Suite,
Yep.
they're called. Okay.
Yep.
So he's a composer.
So he's a composer, right? He had composed the old theme too,
Right.
as well as putting together that intro video.
All right.
And yeah, anyway.
Okay. And I knew the family. I knew the Duchamp family
Right.
as chess players.
Right, his
He had
father and brother.
A father
Yep.
and brother who were very active chess players.
Very
and
active and very strong
played
players.
in Fitchburg back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew the Duchamp family very well
Yep.
back many years ago.
Yep.
Well, Dave, exactly 2 weeks ago, the 91st Massachusetts Open Chess Championship ended in Westford, Mass.
Yep.
And we now have a new state champion. Okay, and our director, Darren Dame, actually has a photo of our new state champion.
Yep.
And here he is. There is Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn. He was born Yevgeny, but his name was Americanized to Eugene. He's 43 years old, as I say. He came to this country with his father, mother, family when he was 14 years old in 1994.
Okay.
That's when they immigrated. And he was born in Ukraine.
Right.
He was born actually in a place called Zhytomyr, Ukraine, which is the northwestern part of Ukraine.
Okay.
Okay. 2 years after he came here, at the age of 14, with his parents, he won the state championship. He won actually in 1996.
Really?
The Massachusetts Open as a 16-year-old.
I didn't know that.
No. Well, I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
He did it
So now how many times has he won?
twice. Again, he just won it 2 weeks ago.
So this was the first time since he was 16?
At the age of 16 in 1996, and he won it now 17 years later. No, how many years later? Well,
A lot.
A lot. Anyways,
Like 30 years later.
so anyways, he is our new state champion, and he again scored 5 wins out of, he actually had, was I think 5.5, a draw. He actually had 5 wins and a draw.
Okay.
In the Massachusetts State Championship.
Okay.
Now we also have a photo of a player who he drew in, I think it was round 4 of the tournament in Westford, and that's actually Grandmaster Alexander Ivanov. Now Darren actually has a photo of both Eugene Perelshteyn and Grandmaster Ivanov on the right. This is a photo of both two. Again, we have about 10 Grandmasters in Massachusetts, 5 of whom are really active.
Yep.
But these are the 2 of the most active Grandmasters in Massachusetts, Eugene Perelshteyn on the left and Alexander Ivanov on the right. By the way, Ivanov has won the state championship 14 times. But he doesn't hold the record because the player who holds the record is a player we've done a number of programs on, is John Curto.
Yep.
The late John Curto, who's won it 17 times, Alexander Ivanov has done it 14 times.
And Ivanov tied for second this time.
He
correct?
tied for second. He tied for second in this year's Massachusetts Open.
Yep.
And again, these are annual tournaments that is organized by the Massachusetts Chess Association, known more commonly by its acronym, MACA, M-A-C-A,
Right.
MACA.
Yep.
Most players know it. You say MACA, they know immediately.
Yep.
It's the Massachusetts Chess Association. Now, I'm very pleased to announce and let our viewers know that we had at least a dozen Wachusett Chess Club players compete in this year's Mass Open in Westford.
And who are they?
And I want to give their names. I want to
Okay.
really acknowledge and thank them for their participation. Playing in the championship section, this state championship was done in multiple sections, five main sections. Our own 9-year-old Sean Su, who plays every Wednesday with his sister Laura at the Wachusett Chess Club. He and his sister live in Lexington, but Sean played with the big boys in the championship section, and he was the only one. His rating now, he's a solid Class A player at the age of 9. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Okay, let me list actually the others who played. In the section that was actually reserved mostly for experts and A players, the under 2100 section, we had Frank Cow, Zachary Pan, Bob Cicino, who's now playing at the Worcester
Club,
Worcester Chess Club, a Greater Worcester Chess Club, and Jacob Wu and Krishna Narayanan. Those are 5 players who are, again, Bob Cicino no longer plays with us because the Greater Worcester Chess Club opened up on Thursday night.
Yep.
But the others, Frank Cow, Zachary Pan, Jacob Wu, Krishna Narayanan, they're active members of the Wachusett Chess Club. Now, playing in the section for Class B players, the under 1800 section, we had Mike Urbonis, Tim Antonelli, Michael David, who's actually involved with chess in Groton.
Yep.
In fact, he runs tournaments. In fact, isn't there a tournament coming up that you're going to play in Groton?
Yep, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right, exactly. Michael David of Groton and Renee Manalga-Rowe, whom you played last week at the club. Did you not?
Right.
So those players played in the under 1800s, which is basically mostly Class B players. And of course, we had one player, Anish Saravanan, who played in the under 1500 section, which is usually Class C. And then, but the big news is our own Laura Shu. Sean Shu's sister, she was the big winner in her section. Her under 1200 section, she came in clear second, won a big big money prize. So that's quite an accomplishment for Laura Shu, and her rating is going up and up. I mean, she's only 9 years old. She's the same age as her brother, and she's on her way up. Now, what can we say about Eugene Perelshteyn? He, as I say, won the Mass Open for the first time when he was 16 years old. But he also, I learned that I had forgotten that last year, 2022, Labor Day weekend, the New England Open Championship was held at the same hotel in Westford. He won it. He is our reigning New England Open champion. So he has actually done very well in the past couple of years.
That's why I was surprised when you said it was 30 years ago, because I was thinking, didn't he win?
Yes.
Recently, but it was the New England Open.
It was the New England Open he won, and I had forgotten about that, but I checked, and he did win that. Okay. Did I mention that his father was actually a World Chess Federation master? His father, Michal, was a professional chess coach back in Ukraine. So, and again, and that's what actually Eugene is doing now. He's both a player but also a chess teacher. So he combines the playing.
And he just recently published a book too.
Yes, he did. Just last year. In fact, he also co-authored also with someone else a few years ago, but he did. I forget the name of the book. I should have actually.
It's something to do with positional evaluation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but in the tournament that he won, the Mass Open, the state championship, he didn't play any short game. And we at Chess Chat love short games, so we can present our viewers short games. Thanks to you, Dave, you found a very instructive, a good game that he played, that Eugene Perelshteyn played in 2010 at the World Open. Where was that played?
It was Philadelphia, I guess.
Well, King of Prussia. Yeah, it's usually held in Philadelphia.
Right.
By the way, the World Open is the biggest open tournament in the world. I mean, it's the World Open. I mean, yeah. So he played actually a grandmaster by the name of Alexander Onyshuk, and Darren, our director, has a photo of Alexander Onyshuk. There he is. Yeah. He also is a Ukrainian-American grandmaster who came to this country. Let's see, I had when he came to this country, he immigrated actually at the age of 25 in 2001. So he came after Eugene Perelshteyn. Yeah. But he became a grandmaster before he came to the United States. He became a grandmaster in 1994. But he was U.S. champion in 2006. Yep. He's a former U.S. champion, and he also is he's a U.S. Open co-champion. So he's no slouch either, you know. But Eugene Perelshteyn faced him in the 2010 World Open in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania.
And we've got that game.
And that's the game we're going to present right now.
Yep.
And who had white in the game we're going to present to our viewers?
Perelshteyn had white.
Okay, Perelshteyn white.
And he opened with D4.
Okay.
One of the two most popular opening moves.
Exactly. All right, to which Onyshuk, Alexander Onyshuk, responded by playing the pawn to F5. Now, you pointed out to me before we went on the air that we have presented this defense before. Right. What was the program we did?
It's a Dutch defense, and it was when we had Jim Rizzitano on.
International master Jim Rizzitano.
He showed a game against John Curto, who used to play the Dutch.
Right. So this is known as the Dutch defense.
Right.
Okay. All right. So how did Eugene Perelshteyn continue against the Dutch defense?
He plays C4. So he can bring the knight out behind it.
Okay, that's logical.
Yep.
All right. Black's move. Okay, Onyshuk plays the knight on G8 to F6. He's developing a piece.
Right.
Controlling, of course, the E4 square.
Right.
Has total control of that square.
Yep.
Okay. What's the white's third move?
Knight to C3.
Okay, developing a knight.
Developing a knight behind the C-pawn, yeah.
All right. So, what is Black going to do here? Well, he chooses to play the pawn on D7 to D6.
Right.
D6, okay, which actually opens up now for the bishop. Bishop is now protecting the pawn.
And one of the key things about playing D6 now is that if he had played G6 immediately, H4 is a real danger.
Okay.
So he holds off.
Okay, he delays.
Delays playing G6 for now.
Because you're going to see there's a problem as far as this bishop has to be developed. Yeah.
Right.
So, but okay, so what did Eugene do on the fourth move here?
Plays bishop to G5.
Okay. Now, is there a threat actually of the bishop taking the knight and doubling the pawns?
Right. Yeah. If he were to take, Black would have to take back with the king pawn, and that would just totally ruin his pawn structure.
So Black should avoid having his pawns doubled.
Yes.
Okay, and Onyshuk stops that, having pawns double, by playing the knight on B8 to D7. Knight BD7.
Right, which he was able to do because he had played this first.
Right, exactly. He vacates the D7 square for the knight. Okay, it's White's move now. White's fifth move. What does White do?
So Perelshteyn played queen to C2, attacking the pawn.
Aha. So
and
now
obviously preparing to castle queenside.
Right. So now that pawn is actually unprotected with the knight blocking the defender. Yep. So what does Onyshuk do? Well, he defends the pawn.
Right.
How does he do it? Simply by playing the pawn to G6. All right, so the pawn on F5 is now protected, defended.
And so now this is called the Leningrad Dutch.
Okay. And you know the reason why it's called the Leningrad Dutch?
Not exactly.
Try to guess.
Yes. It was first played in Leningrad, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Very acute, very astute, I should say. It was very popular years ago, but played by players in Leningrad.
Okay.
And that acquired the name Leningrad variation.
Yep.
Okay. It is now White's move. What is actually Perelshteyn going to do on the sixth move?
So he castles queenside. And now a key feature of this position is that this rook is right on the same file as that queen. So if these pawns get exchanged,
right now they're
dangerous.
They're they're on the file, so the file is blocked.
Right, but if it opens up,
yes,
that's a problem for Black.
So now what does Onyshuk do in response to castling? Well, he just developed his bishop to G7.
Yeah.
Okay. The only square the bishop can go to.
Right.
Okay. All right. So now it is actually White's seventh move. What does White do now?
So he plays an interesting move. He plays knight h3. I mean, it's odd that knights get developed off to the edge like that, but he's looking to
redeploy,
to come to f4, and then he could even hop in there, trapping the queen. So he wants to put the knight right there.
Right, exactly. So his aim is actually to redevelop it to f4.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is Onyshuk going to do in response? Well, he actually, before he could castle here, could, but he chooses to play the pawn to e5 because he can support the advance of the pawn to e5 because he has the knight on d7, the pawn on d6, so he can do that.
And so now he stopped the knight from going to f4.
Right, exactly, right. With the pawn on e5, no knight is going to f4. Okay, so what is White going to do now on the 8th move?
But now what he does is takes the pawn on e5.
Okay, all right.
And
so
really just one
there's only one
way.
move here. He cannot take, actually, with the pawn.
He could, but
it would be very dangerous. Now have an open D file with the queen on this file,
pinned,
with the rook actually on D1 like that. So he captures the pawn with the knight.
With the knight.
Knight takes on E5. That's his move. I should be paying attention to our monitor, making sure that
it's up to date.
We're up to date. Okay, so with the knight on e5, what does actually Onyshuk do now?
He plays knight to f4 like he planned.
Right, exactly. All right, so he has total control of this d5 square, for one thing. Yeah,
right.
Total control. All right, and maybe Black says, wait a minute, I don't want any knight sinking in here, seeing that he has total control of that. So Onyshuk, to stop that knight being placed on d5, plays the pawn up to c6. C6 keeps any enemy piece out of that d5 square.
But now, of course, it weakens this pawn, which has nothing to protect it other than the queen.
Right. See, the pawn was, with the pawn on c7, was being it was defended. But now the only thing defending that pawn on d6 is the queen. So
and one thing we can point out quickly is that right here, you might think that the knight could have just taken this pawn on c4.
Yeah.
But if he had, then the queen would have gone to a4 check and won the knight.
And won the knight on c4. Okay, so it would be a mistake to take the pawn on c4.
So now he could do it.
Now he's threatening. Now
he is threatening to take it.
Right. Now he is now threatening to win that pawn on c4. However,
White plays e3. So now the bishop is defending it.
Okay, with e3. Okay. All right. So Black realized, okay, I can no longer capture the pawn on c4 because it's defended by the bishop on f1.
Yeah.
So I'm going to retreat the knight back to f7, so I can attack this bishop on g5.
Right.
Okay. So White has to make a decision here. Do we take the knight on f6, or do we do something else?
Right.
For example, can the bishop actually just retreat?
Yeah, if he retreats, you can show what's going to happen here.
That would be a blunder.
That would be a blunder.
Retreating the bishop would allow the pawn to move to g5, forking the bishop and the knight because it's protected. The pawn is protected by the knight, and White would lose a piece.
Right.
So that would be a big blunder.
That'd be a big blunder. He could take.
Could take.
And then Black would probably take back with the queen, but but that would be, he'd have this queen and bishop pointing at the right at the king. That's not a good idea.
So, White does not want to take the knight on f6.
So the only other choice is to defend it.
Okay.
With h4.
Okay. So Black says, this bishop here pinning this knight is very annoying.
Right.
And he decides, I want to eliminate that bishop that's pinning the knight on f6.
And we can show, I mean, one thing we had talked about before is this is probably the turning point of the game.
Right here?
Right here, where with this attack coming, probably the best thing Black could do would be like to develop the knight, queen out here somewhere.
Yes, bring the queen to
queen out.
Yes,
the bishop and then castle
queenside.
So get away from the attack.
So that should have been his course of action.
Yeah.
He chose not to do that. Instead, he eliminated the bishop, which he should not have done.
Yeah, Perelshteyn's talking about this game said that Black was still playing for a win.
Right.
Because this is the World Open where you've got to win with White and you have to win with Black.
Okay. So Onyshuk takes the bishop. Knight takes g5.
Yeah.
And of course, Perelshteyn retakes.
Takes back.
H takes g5.
And now he's attacking the knight on f6.
Okay. All right. So now the knight is attacked.
Yep.
So the knight has to move, and he's not going to retreat back to the back rank. He's going to go up to g4. Knight g4.
Yep.
It attacks the pawn on on f2,
Yep.
but of course the queen is protecting that pawn.
Yep.
But again, he avoids being captured. Anyways, so now what does white do?
Now it gets interesting here. He plays c4, and obviously black can't capture
No.
because the pawn is pinned.
And by the way, we now have a double attack on this pawn.
Right.
With the pawn on c5 and the rook on d1, it's threatening to win the pawn.
Right.
With the rook. Okay. So what Onyshik does here, he advances the pawn. He thinks, I don't know how much time he spent analyzing this.
Probably not much.
But he probably said, okay, hey, I got a nice strong pawn chain.
Right.
So I'll just advance the pawn
and lock everything up.
Lock everything up.
And he probably saw this far.
Yeah.
And he thought, when we get to this position, I've just locked everything up so that the attack is over.
Right. He probably thought that.
But then what we had said before was that, grandmasters have this feel for when the position is ripe for a piece sacrifice.
Right. Yeah.
And in fact, that's what happens here.
So he overlooked White's next move.
Yeah.
Which what Perelshteyn
so
played.
White sacrifices his knight.
Oh wow! So he takes the pawn.
Yeah.
And this is now we have some nasty threat. We actually have a nasty threat of bringing with the check over f6 check and winning rook winning the queen.
Winning the queen.
All right. So
he really has no choice.
So Onyshik makes the decision he's going to accept the sacrifice.
Really,
to try to show that this is an unsound sacrifice. He feels that that's his only hope is to try to refute this sacrifice.
Yep.
He captures the knight with the pawn. C takes d5.
Yep.
Okay, that's what he does. And now, what does White do now? White could actually take the pawn immediately with the rook. Rook takes d5.
Sure.
But Perelshteyn didn't do that, did he?
No.
He had what we call a Zwischenzug, an in-between move.
So he develops his last piece, the bishop, with check. So he puts it on b5.
Exactly. And it's there. It's now when Onyshik realizes, wait a minute,
everything's converging.
I cannot block with the bishop. I could, but it would be a big mistake because now the rook would take on d5, and we have.
Well, he could even.
We actually
come in here, forking the queen and the bishop is a
Wow!
possibility.
Yeah, this was material. So he realizes, wait a minute, I cannot block the check.
Yep.
I got to move the king.
Yep.
And he moves the king actually to f8. He moves over to this square, f8, to a dark square.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So what does Perelshteyn do now on his 16th move?
So he brings the rook in.
Okay.
Rook takes a pawn on d5. Now that's attacking the queen.
Okay. So the queen has to move.
Yep.
But the queen now says, wait a minute, I've got this pawn on g5. I'll take. Queen takes g5, which Onyshik does. Okay, so he's got, how is material here? We have 6 pawns for white, and we got 5. So black is behind 1 pawn right here. Is it 6 pawns? I count 6 pawns versus.
But black has an extra piece.
Oh, that's right.
Has an extra bishop.
That's right. White sacrificed the knight. So black has an extra piece here.
Yep.
However, the position is not looking good here for black.
For black's
even
king,
being a piece ahead.
So Perelshteyn plays queen to d2.
What's the threat?
The threat is, there's, I think, numerous threats.
You
can bring the rook down here, check.
Right. Okay, that's one threat, yeah. So this is a nasty, by the way, I don't think Onyshik wants any rook coming down with a check here. So what he does, he plays this bishop on g7 to f6,
right,
which now stops the rook from coming down and checking, right?
Right.
Okay. So what does now Eugene Perelshteyn now do?
I think this is kind of a clever move.
Yes.
Because, he'd like to be able to play the knight here, forking the king and the queen, but the bishop's covering it, so he puts this bishop in the way.
So he has a block. He puts a blocker.
Blocker in the way.
And now the threat is to come in here and fork the king and the queen.
Right.
And win the queen. However, Onyshik says, wait a minute, I can't allow this fork.
Sure.
I'll just take the bishop.
Yep.
Bishop takes d7. That's what he does. So there's an exchange here. All right, so now what does Eugene do?
Now he plays rook takes d7, so again, he could bring the knight in here with the fork.
Right. So that's the threat now. The major threat now is to bring knight to e6 forking king and queen and winning the queen. Okay. So Onishik sees that. He says, wait a minute, I can't allow any knight coming to e6 and forking my king and queen. Yeah. So he plays the rook, which hasn't moved at all here on a8, and brings it over to e8, which now stops any check on e6 with the knight. Right. Okay. So now what does Eugene Perelshteyn do?
So one of the reasons he put the queen on the d file was to be able to play moves like this: queen to d6, check.
Ooh, wow, check. Well, and all right. So now what does actually Perelshteyn do? Well, wait a minute. Let's show our viewers why he cannot move the king out of check. The only move the king has is actually one square.
Yeah.
He cannot move over to g8. That would be a blunder. Why would that be a blunder? Because there's a mate here.
Yeah.
There's
so
a mate.
The queen would come back.
Queen check.
Here.
And then he'd be forced to come back to f8
and, then the queen
and get mated on f7 with the queen. So in this position, with the check with a queen d6, yep. He's got to block the check.
Right.
In the only piece, well, he could do it with the rook, but no, he does it with the bishop.
Which attacks, so he's attacking the white queen.
So now the white queen is under attack.
Yep.
Okay. So what does Eugene Perelshteyn do now in his 20
So now he plays the move we were talking about, knight d6, forking the king and the queen.
So now we have the fork. Yeah. Now the rook was actually protecting that square, but now no longer. It blocks. But all right, so what does actually, with the check, the king has to move now.
Right.
The king moves to g8. That's what Onishuk did. 22nd move coming up for white. What does...
Takes the queen.
Knight takes g5.
Yep.
Okay, we see knight takes g5.
Yep.
All right. So what Onishuk does, well, okay, you take my queen, I take your queen.
Yep.
Bishop takes the queen on d6. That's what Onishuk did. Bishop takes d6. And now what does Eugene Perelshteyn do?
He takes back with the pawn.
Okay. All right. Okay. And
this is going to prove critical here.
Okay, so... Right now, Onishuk says, wait a minute, this knight annoys me. In fact, there's a threat actually even moving the knight here and winning the rook.
Right, would be trapped.
Trapped, yeah. So he plays the pawn up to h6, attacks the knight.
Yep.
Okay, but white doesn't have to move that knight at all.
Doesn't even worry.
No, he doesn't worry about that.
He finishes the game by playing rook to c7.
Right, exactly. And after he played rook to c7, Onishuk resigned.
Yeah.
Now he resigned because what is the
threat is he can't stop this pawn from promoting.
Right, exactly.
Without throwing away probably the rook for the pawn.
So that's why he resigned. Advancing the pawn to d7 would win the game.
Right. Yeah. So probably the best he can do is put the rook there, but
they're still coming.
d7 and then
playing
rook here, or the knight could come in and attack the rook.
Yes, right. Cut the rook and win another piece. It wins the game. So, anyways, that was the game that actually Eugene Perelshteyn played, 2010 World Open against Alexander Onishuk. Now, I want to let our viewers know we have
just got to do it quick, but
okay, we got to do it quickly. But coming up Sunday, June 18th, Father's Day, happens to be. For the 18th year in a row, the Finnish Center Summer Park is doing their summer festival, which they call Kesäjuhla. We're doing a chess tournament in honor of Dana Sulin, a very well-known Fitchburg apple grower who passed away some years ago. Mm-hmm. We're doing a tournament. Anyone who wants to play in this fun tournament, no entry fee. Show up to register by 9:15, from 8:45 to 9:15, and you can play in a fun tournament. It'll be over by 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. We play 5 rounds, and we hope to see as many chess players in the area to come and play at the Finnish Center Summer Park, June 18th, Kesäjuhla. Come and play and have fun at chess.